Okay. Hello, hello. I want to start out the evening by thanking you for joining me. I know we all have lots of places to be, lots of things going on. This is truly one of my favorite topics to talk about. The reason being is because our bodies were so wonderfully and so beautifully designed. And so many of us have heard, especially over the last 2 years, 3 years almost, so much about the immune system. We need to boost the immune system. We need to support the immune system, immune system, immune system, right? But so few people really understand the complexities of the immune system, what it looks like to support the immune system, and how it was designed to work synergistically, meaning our immune system is not just this one simple function. There's actually two components, two parts, two main parts to our immune system. And that's what we're going to dive into tonight. So I began researching this topic over 18 years ago when I was pregnant with my oldest son, because I really wanted to understand what modern medicine had to offer and what holistic medicine had to offer as I was contemplating big medical decisions for my child. If you don't know who I am, you don't know anything about my background, it's probably important that I tell you that I have served in the holistic community for nearly 19 years. I've worked as a midwifery assistant, as a doula, a lactation educator, a childbirth educator, a nutritionist, and an applied kinesiologist. So my heart and my passion, literally what I get out of bed for in the morning, is to help educate and empower people when it comes to their health and wellness. It truly gives me so much joy. And even bigger picture, especially women. I want to help women feel empowered as the gatekeepers of their home. And a huge component of staying healthy is making sure that we have a healthy, functioning immune system, which is why you all are here. You all are interested in the same thing. So, the goal tonight is to have you walk away feeling like you understand what's going on in your body and you understand how to support your family's immune system year round. Because this is so important to point out. Sick season is not a season. It's not like when God was creating, the months and the rotations of the earth. He was like, I'm gonna like plop this season down and call it sick season. The reality of it is we start eating sugar, we start relaxing a little bit on moving our body, or it just gets colder, right? In October. We start eating candy, we start eating a lot of like sugar treats, all of that. And we go all the way through Easter. And so people always come to me in like early November, they're like, Nicole, what should I do to support my immune system? I'm like, this is a day in, day out job for us to do, for us to steward these beautiful bodies of ours. So we're going to learn how immunity is built. We're going to learn how the body eliminates pathogens and toxins and how hyperstimulation of the immune system may occur. I will be touching on vaccines this evening. Nobody like hold your breath. Nobody freak out. I will not be discussing whether or not we should vaccinate. I've been teaching this for 18 years. I have yet to have this conversation get ugly, go bad in any way, shape, or form. Some of y'all have been around for 10 years. You've watched me teach us. You've watched me talk about vaccines. You know that I'm holding space for people just to understand how they work. So I just encourage you to help foster a community of humility, which is just a heart and a mind position of being teachable. Be gracious, be kind. Let's avoid like judgmental stuff as we touch on this topic. This is just me kind of prefacing things so that we can just remain open and open-minded and neutral and just really seeing how different substances work on our immune system. So there is our disclaimer, okay? I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not giving medical advice. This is literally just explaining how things work. Okay, so let's dive in. Our immune system. In recent years, in the last 15, 20 years, science has really, really, really begun to understand that the human immune system is much more complicated than we ever thought. It's composed of two functional branches or two compartments, which may work together in a mutually cooperative way or in a mutually antagonistic way depending on the health of the individual. So we're going to take a look at what this looks like. When you first see this graphic, you're going to be like, wow, eyes bugged out. But we're going to explain it. We're going to break it down. And by the end, you're going to be really excited that you learned this. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Maybe. There we go. I got it, y'all. Okay, so what you are looking at, the two functions of our immune system. I'm actually going to start with the Th2 side of our immune system first. And this is called our humoral immunity, or our humor is blood. Humor is liquid. Okay. So this is the Th2 side of the immune system. What you're going to see at the top of my screen, you're going to watch for my arrow. Normally, I would have like a whiteboard in person and I would be teaching all this. And you guys could watch all the markers go, right? But y'all are going to have to work with an arrow on my computer. Okay. So primary function of the humoral immune system is to produce antibodies in the blood, which help sense, recognize different pathogens. Now, in this particular situation, I wrote pathogen up here. This could be a virus, it could be a bacteria, it could be an environmental toxin. And you'll see that this pathogen, those little triangles all around the pathogen, those are called antigen determinants or epitopes. And every pathogen that our body is exposed to basically throws up these little flags like, hey, something's off here, something is wrong here. So with the Th2 side of our immune system, our B cells recognize the pathogens because of their membrane antibodies. So you'll see here, I have like little orange flags sticking up, and you'll see how it's open and ready to receive one of the antigens. So not all of our B cells are activated by each antigen. So you'll see over here on this B cell, there's like some yellow looking flags. Each one of our B cells have different membrane antibodies to recognize different pathogens that come in. So once a B cell identifies a pathogen, it then will sync together, and that B cell will do one of two things. It will create memory B cells, which are clones of that activated B cell. And it's basically like an army. So when I taught my kids this, because even my young children have been taught this, I was like, imagine like a pirate ship invading an island. Okay. And once everybody who lives on the island knows what that pirate flag looks like, they become aware of like, oh, wait, we've seen that pirate ship before. So they go on high alert. Right? And that is the job of our memory B cells, to say, we know what to do, we know how to do this, body, let's go into action. Another thing that happens is B cells then become plasma cells that fight against the pathogen. And that's when antibodies are made. And then antibodies coat the antigen and inhibit bacteria from multiplying in the future. So in the case of like strep, the strep is like a perfect example in this situation. Once you've had strep, if it runs its course, I know that can be controversial, whatever you decide to do or however you decide to address strep, your body then says, hey, we know this, let's fight it, okay? So now let's look over here at the Th1 cell-mediated immunity. So real quick, with humoral immunity, this is the side of our immune system is what is activated when things are outside of our cells. So that's something huge to remember. So environmental toxins, viruses, bacteria come into our body and it's outside of our cell. Now with cell-mediated immunity, it is what happens within our cell, and you're about to see why, which is it's just so amazing how our immune system is made, okay? So what happens with the cell-mediated immunity is our body will detect a pathogen, and then a phagocyte comes along and engulfs the pathogen or the infected cell. And then what happens is an antigen presenting cell is created, and it begins to have the markers on the outside as well. It begins to have those like the flags. that are all popping up outside of the cell. From there, a few things happen. Either a memory, sorry, we're going to go down right down the middle. I kind of ran out of room on my graphic. Okay. Again, I'm used to a really large whiteboard to teach this. We have two different cells that are created, CD8 or CD4. From CD8, we can have a memory cytotoxic T cell, which is similar to our B cells on the humoral side. So this is the memory. Okay, we know this when a cancer cell pops up. Okay, we know how to fight this because we all have cancer in our bodies at all times. But our bodies learn to identify different cancerous cells through the memory cytotoxic T cells. And then over to the right, you'll see the CD4. Now, the CD4 is where our helper T cells are created. Our helper T cells are the keystone, the absolute keystone for our immune system, and you're about to see why. From our helper T cells, macrophages come about. These are white blood cells that are non-specific killers, and these develop from the chief phagocytic cells, and they don't act against a particular antigen. What they are looking for is glucose on the outside of the cell, which I'm going to talk about that some more in a little bit. So when this happens, our helper T cells do one of two things. You'll see this little pink arrow going up here. They literally will communicate, the helper T cells communicate to our B cells and say, hey, we need stimulation. We need both sides of our immune system functioning here. We need to create immunity. We need the plasma cells. We need everything all at once happening. And then the B cells will present an antigen to the activated helper T cell. So you'll see the bridge here in the middle. This is what a healthy functioning immune system looks like. So there's communication here between helper T cells, between the B cells, and our body should stay in an ideal world in an excellent balance between the Th1, Th2 side of our immune system. Okay, I'm scrolling down, making sure I'm not forgetting anything with my notes from this part. Don't believe that I am. Hopefully y'all had a second to really take this in. If you needed to screenshot it, you can do that. Or if you want to message me after the call, if you would like your own copy of this, I can send it to you. More than happy to do that. Okay, so let me stop the screen sharing. And I get really sing-songy. I don't know, it's weird. Maybe I get that excited over teaching this topic. Okay, so let's talk about how our immune system ends up imbalanced. Because again, we've heard about supporting the immune system. Very few people have actually heard the language of an imbalanced immune system. And now hopefully you can see with the two sides that you can see where imbalance has the possibility to occur. But what happens? How does the Th1 side of our immune system end up imbalanced? Well, it's actually kind of simple. It's through a lack of nutrition and through leaky gut syndrome and dysbiosis, meaning an imbalanced level of bacteria in the gut, which creates inflammation and then sucks up all of our glutathione, which is our master antioxidant. And then the macrophage begin to not be able to activate. And like there's just an extreme reaction in the Th1 side. So basically inflammation takes over, cancer can take over, and the autoimmune issues end up happening. So that is how the Th1 side of our immune system ends up imbalanced. Then factors that contribute to Th2 dominance. Again, Th2 dominance and the whole Th2 side of our immune system is external. It's outside of our cells. So how we end up dominant on the Th2 side is environmental toxins, such as pesticides, lead, mercury, and other heavy metals, preservatives, the use of drugs, such as morphine, tobacco, excessive alcohol, steroids, pathogens, including HIV, hepatitis, candida, and strep. So if you guys, I know that you've heard of this, once you people who are prone to getting strep can get it over and over and over again, which I'm going to address in a second on how that happens and why that happens. Another thing that makes us Th2 dominant is continuous stress, negative attitudes, and suppressed emotions. And then dehydration, low body temperature, and chronic insomnia. So this is the side of our immune system. When we go into the doctor, if they are looking at the complete person, they're going to say, how much stress have you been under? What's been going on in your life? Because this is where that imbalance comes out and we end up having bigger issues. So, okay. So growing number of scientists believe that the increase in America, Europe, Australia, and Japan in allergic and autoimmune diseases, which stimulate the humoral or the Th2 branch of the immune system, is caused by the lack of stimulation of the cellular or Th1 branch of the immune system. Why? And this is something that we get that is so fascinating. I'm sure you have heard at this point about overwashing our hands or using hand sanitizer and how it destroys all of the good bacteria, or how it's not always wise to just cut off a fever, right? Like fevers are good. That's the Th1 side of our immune system. Fevers are a way that our body says, hey, something's off here. We need to get to work. And then we discharge the pathogens. That's the Th1 side. So when we get the runny nose, when we get the fever, if we get vomiting, diarrhea, that is our Th1 side of our immune system. But so many of us are so scared of these normal symptoms that we avoid that, right? So this is where we talk about vaccines. This is truly remarkable when you think about what science has been able to do and how the immune system works. So vaccines' job is to stimulate the Th2 response, to get those B cells and those plasma cells to multiply and to form antibodies to the disease that we're getting vaccinated for. When we are stimulating the Th2 side of our immune system over and over and over again, without getting a fever, without getting the runny nose, without any of the other things that come along with the disease, it is like repeatedly tasting our food without getting any nutrition, because the Th1 response is not activated. So just like too much, like repeated tasting of food will ruin an appetite, too much stimulation of the tasting humoral immune system can inhibit and suppress the Th1 side of our immune system, because the antibody production can suppress the acute inflammatory response of the Th1. Are y'all tracking with me on that one? Meaning, like, a vaccine's job is to give us just enough of the disease to create B cells, but not enough for it to trigger an actual immune response. That would not be good for us, okay? So when we eat a standard American diet that's lacking nutrition, lacking minerals, lacking glutathione, lacking a lot of the things that we were intended to eat, drink, and to nourish our bodies, the Th1 branch of our immune system is not being stimulated by the vaccine, and it's not being nourished. So we can end up extremely Th2 dominance. And we know when that happens, that allergies begin to happen, focus issues start to happen. And I'll get into the list of signs of Th2 dominance in just a second. I want to make sure that I wrap this up. And then on the flip side, when we use products, and hear me say this, because I'm truly teaching from a very neutral place, I promise. When we use products, both over the counter products, OTC meds, and natural substances, to eliminate the body's acute inflammatory response of destroying, digesting, and discharging foreign antigens from the body, we are impeding our immune system. What does that mean? When we take something like Mucinex to stop drainage, that is our body literally in action, creating this whole process of the CD4, CD8, the helper T cells that then communicate to B cells. But if we just cut those symptoms off, we're actually not building immunity. We're not, which is why then we get in this cycle of getting sick over and over and over again, because our body is not balanced and we're not making these B cells, and we don't have these memory cells on either side. Like, it's just like vacant. Nobody's home, right? Okay. So what are the signs of an imbalanced immune system? So if you are Th1 dominant, you may show up as having rheumatoid arthritis, type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, psoriasis, Crohn's, and Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's can be tricky. Hashimoto's can be Th1 dominant or Th2 dominant. So how to know if you are Th2 dominant? Th2 dominant shows up as allergies, asthma, eczema, Graves, ulcerative colitis, systemic lupus, and systemic autoimmune issues. Okay, so again, when we end up with Th2 dominance, it's because our body has been tasting and tasting and tasting and tasting and is now on high alert. Remember when I talked about those pirate flagships? Our body has had so much tasting that it's like when we are super stressed out and we hear loud banging, like after all day long being with our kids, right? And it's like one more bang, we're like, ah, like I can't handle it. Our immune system gets to a breaking point after all of the tasting, after the environmental toxin overload, after the heavy metal overload, after being exposed to all of these external pathogens, that it just stays on high alert. So then it begins to think, we're allergic to everything. We need to watch out for everything. Everybody is a pirate. Everybody's coming to invade us, right? So one of the biggest questions I get asked is, how can we test? How do we know if we are Th1 or Th2 dominant? We don't. Apart from symptoms, we just are not there yet with tests. The best that we can do is process of elimination through our testing. So meaning if like we have antibodies showing up in our blood, if we have see hints of Th17 inflammatory markers in the body, if we have high C-reactive proteins in our bodies, if we have low ferritin or high ferritin. So it literally comes down to kind of making a reasonable guess and looking at the symptoms that we have. If you know, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up around a lot of pesticides. I grew up around a lot of herbicides. I grew up drinking well water off of a farm. And I had a lot of symptoms for being Th2 dominant. So it wasn't a far stretch for me to see that. So if you read one of our invites to come to this video, to join us in this video, then you saw that I mentioned, or whoever it is that you followed here mentions, that there are Th1 stimulating compounds and there are Th2 stimulating compounds, meaning if there's an imbalance, so say if you are Th1 dominant, you do not want to stimulate the Th1 side of your immune system because it's already overstimulated. It's already in high gear. So there are a few compounds that you may want to avoid, which is why these blanket statements that people give, this is great for everyone. Like, it's wise to do your own research. Or when you hear somebody like, oh, I'm taking medicinal mushrooms. I'm a huge fan of medicinal mushrooms, legal medicinal mushrooms. Okay, let's just give a statement there. I live in Colorado, got to be super clear. Okay, medicinal mushrooms. People are like, oh, I took lion's mane, or I took turkey tail to support my immune system. That might not be a great fit for you if you are Th1 dominant. Along with echinacea. Echinacea is really, really popular, but if you are Th1 dominant, it might not be the best option for you for boosting the immune system. Another one that was very popular over the last few years is lemon balm or Melissa. And if you are Th1 dominant, Melissa is not a good fit. Chlorella, and then grapeseed extract. And then Th2 stimulating compounds. So again, if you are Th2 dominant, doesn't mean that all these things are bad for you, but if you are feeling under the weather, if you are feeling sick, these may be some things that you want to avoid. You may want to just like ease off because the Th2 side of your immune system is already in high gear. So it's caffeine. I know everyone is like, oh, really? Like, you went there. Yeah, I went there. Green tea extract, white willow bark, resveratrol, turmeric, which is fascinating because that's one that a lot of people just reach for right away. But if you are Th2 dominant, you need to pay attention to how you feel. And again, this is what science is showing us. This is a hypothesis of what can stimulate, right, the immune system. Nothing beats you paying attention to your body. If you feel more run down, if you feel like you're not getting better, you might need to switch things up or lay off of some things, right? Okay. So now let's talk about immune modulating. What does immune modulation mean? Immune modulation is a stimulation of the immune system. That can be Th1, it can be Th2, it can be both. Okay. What can we do from a practical standpoint to balance the Th1, Th2 immune system? A few free options for you. Number one, manage stress. Manage stress. That is one of the best things that we can do to bring our Th1, Th2 immune system into balance, is really trying to get on top of all these big emotions that we have. This can be as simple as going for a walk, exercising, breath work, um, whatever your tool is, journaling, right? Another thing to do is great sleep. That's why when we are sick, what do our bodies naturally want to do? Most of the time we want to go to sleep. And instead, what do? We end up pumping ourselves through for more caffeine. We're like, we just got to get through the day, got to get through the day, got to get through the day, right? We are literally torturing our immune systems when we do that. So getting on a good sleep schedule, and maintaining that, trying to really protect that, is one of the best ways that we can protect our immune system year round. All right. And then there are compounds that balance the immune system, meaning they work on both sides of the Th1, Th2 immune response. So they activate both sides, get both sides working together. First one is coconut oil. Easy enough. We've all heard about it, right? You want extra virgin, unrefined coconut oil. Then there's vitamin A. One of the greatest sources of vitamin A is cod liver oil, grass-fed butter, and pasture-fed eggs. Then vitamin E, which is in avocados, red palm oil, extra virgin olive oil, grass-fed butter, and eggs. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is quickly becoming a little bit controversial in the holistic world as far as whether or not we supplement. I will always advocate for getting your vitamin D from the sun and then getting it from fish oil, cod liver oil. Always. First step. That is primary way. And then omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA in particular. And then glutathione boosting agents, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Then the last one I'm going to talk about, because it is one of the most spectacular compounds that I have researched, and I just learned about it this year, is acemannan. I really, really, really want you to tune in here, because the research behind acemannan is astounding. It's backed by they say now it's over $200 million worth of research. And when I began doing all of my research 18 years ago, I didn't know of a compound that was studied this thoroughly, that could be taken by all ages. Well, I mean, like literally right out of the womb, and I'll explain why, all the way to like 80s and 90s. It's something simple. Doesn't matter if you're Th1 dominant, doesn't matter if you're Th2 dominant, doesn't matter your medical history, because of all of the things that it does. So like I said, we've been talking about immune boosting. We've been talking about supporting the immune system. But what acemannan does is something so far beyond all of that. Acemannan has been shown to not only support overall immunity, but address autoimmune issues. So when that imbalance happens because of Th2 dominance or Th1 dominance, acemannan goes in and helps with that. It helps heal the lining of the gut, which we heard that's one of the best things you can do to support the Th1 side of the immune system. It helps aid in wound healing. It balances blood sugar. So again, there's that Th1. When we get into the diabetes zone and you end up Th1 dominant, acemannan is again backed by research for this. It helps support collagen and glutathione production. Remember how I said glutathione is one of the top things that we can do to help balance the immune system. It also helps to increase stem cell production by 300 to 400%. If one of my people wouldn't mind hopping into our boards and posting our acemannan in the chat, and that we all can see the studies that I'm talking about. This is not just me winging it. They're all really there. So let's talk about what acemannan is. Acemannan is a polysaccharide. It's a scientific name for sugar. It's the active ingredient in aloe found in the inner leaf gel. Now, aloe vera is the only known plant on the planet that contains acemannan. And it wasn't until the 1990s that scientists learned to stabilize this molecule, which is so important because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I can just take aloe juice, or I can, just take, I have aloe plants, and I have aloe plants all over my house now. But when you crack open an aloe plant, first of all, it's not going to have the concentration of acemannan, and it loses its stability within 24 hours. So like those aloe juices, those things that we see, which I'm not saying that they're bad, and there's definitely benefits to them, just doesn't have the acemannan in it. So what acemannan does, how this actually works, is so fascinating. So acemannan stimulates the macrophage. So remember the macrophage that goes in and they're scavengers, and they're looking for the glucose on unhealthy cells. And so what acemannan does is it stimulates both the Th1, Th2 immune system so that the immune system can identify and manage foreign cells. So it doesn't boost the immune system, it stimulates it, it regulates it, it stabilizes it, it activates it, it balances the immune system. Aloe vea's acemannan is 4.5 times more potent than any other form of acemannan, and it's clinically been proven to do all of these things that I am talking to you about. So again, this is not just like a hypothesis. This is $200 million worth of research. So here's how it works. When a cell becomes infected with a pathogen, like I already showed you guys, it expresses a glycoprotein on the cell called mannose. Healthy cells do not produce mannose, ever. Not it. Does not happen. Now, the macrophage are those large white blood cells that I showed you on the graphic. They have mannose receptors, and they are known to attack cells that are expressing mannose. Those macrophages are floating around in our bodies looking for cells. Well, hold on. There's two functions of macrophage. Some of them are location specific. So like they'll hang out in our spleen or in our liver. And then other macrophages are just like literally going throughout our body, looking for cells that are expressing mannose. And when they find it, they destroy it. So mannose is like this spotlight for our immune system. So it's like if you literally took a flashlight and you shined it on an unhealthy cell, it's like the mannose is waving those flags that we saw and saying, hey, over here, we're in trouble, we need help. And that's when the macrophage kick into action and go and begin to digest those unhealthy cells. So the body can produce mannose through the liver, but not efficiently, and not with the environmental toxins that we have, not with the hormone imbalance that we have, not with just the craziness that's happening with almost all of our livers now, our impure water, lots of things going on, okay? All right, so acemannan is the only known dietary supplement for mannose. It goes into our bloodstream. Like I said, our disease cells pick up the mannose and express the mannose on the membrane. And the macrophage knows exactly what to do. They know who the good guys are, they know who the bad guys are. And not only do they destroy the diseased cells, but you remember that bridge that I showed y'all with the helper T cells? And then it communicates to the B cells. And it says, hey, this was happening over here on the Th1 side. We need to create antibodies for what's going on in the body. And it naturally stimulates the balance in our immune system. So we're not just supporting Th1, we're not just supporting Th2. We are literally helping to build that bridge for those helper T cells to communicate and say, hey, this is what's happening in our body. Only 2 places that this is found in nature, that acemannan is found in nature, in aloe vera and in breast milk, which is why when women with autoimmune conditions end up pregnant, they go into remission. By the time that their autoimmune condition, by the time they're done breastfeeding, their autoimmune issues normally come back. There's zero coincidence that this happens. It's because the body stops producing this mannose all on its own. And so the body begins to end up with that imbalance again in the Th1, Th2 immune system. So again, full scientific explanation of what's going on there. All right, so aloe vera has a patented form of acemannan. It's 4.5 times stronger than an original formulation. Our founder, Sam Castor, secured exclusive rights to this acemannan as a donation, actually, because of his mission to nourish immunocompromised children. Long backstory here, but this is what's important to know. The casters have a huge heart for orphans. And when they heard that all of these orphans around the world were dying because they were immunocompromised, they sent acemannan to these orphanages and gave these kids this acemannan. You guys understand why that happens now. When you are malnourished, that Th1, remember how I said that earlier in the call? When you are malnourished, your Th1 side of your immune system does not work efficiently, does not work well, right? When they introduced this acemannan into these kids' bodies, their whole system was supported, and they did not have a single child die from being immunocompromised once they got this acemannan. So it's super, super powerful. And if it can literally save the lives of children in third world countries who don't have access to the sanitation, to the nutrition, to the different resources that we have, imagine what it can do in your body. Imagine what it can do in the bodies of our children. Imagine what it can do during these times when it feels like, y'all, like it feels like every other week there's some new something going on, right? Like some new sickness. People are like, I'm not these symptoms, right? Again, this is year round, day by day, week by week, month by month support for our entire system, because it's not just about whether or not we get the sniffles. It's not about whether or not we end up with the flu and we end up throwing up. This is about making sure that our body is functioning optimally, so that when we are introduced to environmental toxins, when we are introduced to heavy metals or stress or the cancer cells that our bodies are struggling to digest, right? That our bodies are healthy and balanced and can work together synergistically. Those two parts of our immune system can work together synergistically to support an immune system, right? So this isn't I mean, yes, it's helpful if you do get sick to pop some extra, acemannan, but this is a way for us in the modern times, as we're exposed to Wi-Fi, all of these things, to support our bodies at a cellular level and support our immune system as a whole. Now, I mentioned that it's great for kids of all ages. Like my daughter's, and she's about to turn 2 in a couple of weeks, but at 21 months old, I was putting 2 and 3 capsules into her morning kefir shake. She was showing up as having eczema and having molluscum, like having a viral overgrowth. We had tried everything for a year, tried everything, every probiotic, prebiotic. We had tried herbal remedies, we had tried essential oils, and nothing was really working. Within a few weeks of working my daughter up to 3 or 4 capsules in the morning, her skin is almost completely clear. Almost completely clear. Why? Because we supported the lining of her gut. We supported her immune system. We got her immune system back into balance to where her body didn't feel like she was in hyperdrive, where she was in overdrive, where it had to present through the skin and say, hey, something's really wrong here, right? And then my husband has been using the acemannan products. So acemannan is in all of Aloe's products except for our BioRes sprays. The most concentrated form of it comes in Immune. This is just straight acemannan. My husband has severe histamine intolerance, majorly Th2 dominant, and within weeks of him getting on acemannan products, his health has turned around. I mean, he's probably improved by 80% at this point. He's sleeping. He's doing so very well. And then with me, I had Hashimoto's. And I have tried so many things to support my thyroid. With that comes a lot of inflammation, and same situation. Within a few weeks, I noticed a significant difference. My thyroid was not evident, like just in watching me swallow. Inflammation in my face, inflammation in my body significantly went down. So even though I'm sitting here sharing all this science, it's also important to know that it really works as well, right? Like it works, and it works beautifully. So all that to say, that is kind of like the wrap up of how our immune system works, what we can do to support it, some tools that you already have, things like getting out, exercising, working on your stress, working on your sleep, and then a really amazing compound that helps balance the immune system. This means that we don't need 10, 11, 12, 13 different herbs and protocols and different things like that, trying to guess what would work best for our bodies, because we have a compound that has been shown clinically to work, which is fantastic. So, if you're interested in joining us in the mission of nourishing 7 million kids, that's the goal of Alavea, to nourish, to literally get this compound into 7 million malnourished children around the world. We would love to talk with you about what that looks like. If you want to get some immune, something really beautiful about Alavea is every time you take a serving of immune or of any of our products, Alavea sends a serving of acemannan to a child who's immunocompromised. So it is a buy one, nourish two model. You've heard of Tom's Shoes, you've heard of Warby Parker, where you buy a pair of shoes, they send a pair of shoes. Alavea has brought that model into the health and wellness industry, and it is literally changing the world. So beautiful company, beautiful hearts, and we would love to chat more with you about that. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you for hanging out. Hopefully you're walking away with a greater understanding of how that beautiful, amazing body of yours was created and designed with purpose, for a purpose. And my heart, my desire for you is that you walk away with a renewed passion to steward that body of yours so very well, whatever that looks like for you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this meeting. If you want to stick around, ask questions, I'm here.